Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast hosted by me, Steve Parker. This is a series that brings a fresh perspective to leadership, motivation, and how to succeed by talking to a diverse range of CEOs, business managers, and world-class talent. We also offer some personal tips to help you in your career. Each episode aims to provide a snapshot into the life and philosophy of some of Taiwan and the world's most successful leaders, and to find out more about why leadership matters. Today in the studio, we're very lucky to have Thomas Fann. He worked for Ford for over 25 years. He's an engineer trained in the US at Michigan U. He's born and bred in Taiwan. He's worked in China, Taiwan, the UK, and Germany. He's been the chairman of AmCham in Taiwan. He's currently the president of TECO, a Taiwanese company, a big conglomerate. Massive job. And he's also super keen on mentoring and startups, and it comes through in his passion. I've seen him talk to young people about what he does and where he's come from. We're very, very lucky to have Thomas talking with us today. I think for your industry, coming from an industry like the car industry, I mean, you're involved with Ford for over 25 years.
Yeah.
That's an industry that has evolved and changed a lot.
A lot.
You must have seen and dealt with a lot of change management over the years, both local companies, as you are now, but also the international companies and how they do. How do you prepare a company for the future?
Well, I think in order to prepare the change of a company, you need to prepare for the change of the person, right? If a leader like me not prepared or not knowledgeable about the change, then probably nothing was going to happen. So all the change all start from people, no matter it's leader themselves or the people working for them or as a team members, right? And a lot of time, you can imagine the change may create a lot of hesitations, resistance, or even anxieties.
Right. People talk about the biggest thing about change is actually fear.
Right.
It's not the process, right?
Right. People like to stay in the comfort zone, especially for people like, they working like me, right? Working in Ford more than, 25 years. Most of people probably, especially at the later part of their career with a company, probably they hesitate to take the challenge of the change. They are going to face the new challenges they didn't have a chance to encounter before. So all kind of a variable that sometimes drive people crazy.
You've been working for organizations that have thousands of people all around the world.
Yeah.
How do you start preparing a company of that size for a digital transformation or a future change of work?
Well, I think any kind of change must have a clear purpose. Why? A company need to change, maybe because they feel they need to grow differently, or most of the time, they are already facing some kind of external challenges.
How do you deal with opposition? I mean, a family is one thing, but I mean, let's go back to say something like Ford or a company of that size. How do you go about dealing with? I mean, you have to make people understand the purpose. I hear that. You make people understand the why. We need to change. That in itself can be something scary. I mean, if you're telling people we need to change because we're about to go bankrupt, or if we continue to do this, we'll lose our business.
Right.
How do you prepare people without making them afraid?
Yeah, that's actually I think the difference between a good company and a great company. A good company, they change at a speed when they need. But a great company, they plan for the change. In some cases, they change even before the thing getting ugly. They are almost like a disrupt themselves every 5-8 years. One example is Philips, for example. So they constantly, disrupt themselves, set up a new organization. So they're kind of full of the entrepreneurship within a huge company. That's kind of a great company character, I would say.
So I think a lot of this is an interesting point when you talk about this idea of a company changing before the change is necessary. a lot of people would really want to ask, how do you know? I mean, how do these great people know that the world is going to be something? I mean, it's very hard to predict a lot of the changes that happen in the world. But how do you, as a CEO, president, how do you keep ahead of kind of what's going on in the world?
To my understanding, most of the time, a lot of companies know what's coming. To ride on the wave instead of be, totally overthrown by the wave of change.
These are almost like bits of personal advice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to, as a person gets older, I think you have to, you also have to plan, right? Your life is going to change.
Exactly.
Things are going to happen. And if you're not willing to face up to the fact that
Exactly.
the world is going to change.
Yes.
The only thing constant, right?
Yes.
People tell us is change.
Yes. And I think that we say many, many times, maybe to ourselves and to our friends, face the reality. We know something coming. For example, in the second half of this year, the growth of a global economy going to slow down, right? And so we need to get prepared. For example, do we need to go out to secure something? Do we need to get rid of our inventory quickly? Do we need to trim down our hiring so we can move quickly? So if really something change, we become lean and we become adaptable to the change.
So you bring up this idea of what's happening in the world right now. It's the first time I've ever seen for the 30 plus years that I've been working that principals, companies that you want to buy products from are actually asking you to reduce your forecasts. They're telling you that, in the past it would have been sell more, sell more, sell
right.
more. Now in this kind of these pandemic times, they're sort of saying, well, just, I may not have all of that for you, or it's going to take 3-4 months.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that your company can react quickly? How does a big company, respond and change and move to something as enormous as this?
Well, if you look at over the last 3, 4, 5 months, right? In the beginning of the year, all those tech, stocks still riding high, their value off the roof, and boom, the Russia-Ukraine war happened, and then the interest rates going to be raised, and suddenly a lot of things changed. And you look at how quickly Amazon and some of the companies changed. It's going to be hard to believe they didn't have planned for that, right? Or if they didn't have the plan, but then they had this great capability to draw the plan almost like within a couple of days.
So how important then are the people around you? I mean, if you're a CEO and you're running a company, if you're a president, if you're a chairperson, whatever you are, you can't control everything.
Exactly, because nowadays no one can do everything, especially for a big organization. The CEO or chairman relies on a great team to function well. So the executive team members need to be on the same page all the time. Communication between each other going to be very, very smooth and very timely. Nothing going to be delivered just because of one man. Right. Of course, you can talk about Elon Musk, right? But honestly, he has great team in Tesla. He has great team in SpaceX.
So Thomas, continuing on from this point, we were talking about change management and we're talking about building teams. I wanted to talk a little bit about how important then, in order to build these teams, how important is something like learning and development? I mean, everyone talks about it. Companies always say they really value learning and development. People, when they're employed, always say, I want to have a company that's going to train me and teach me. But really, for you, in your experience, how important is learning and development?
Well, I think a good company or a great company, one of the characters, they learn how to adapt, how to react, and how to proactively act. And just like you mentioned about if something failed, the first question is, well, what do we learn from that? Right. So just like when we were young kids, right, we made all sort of difficult mistakes for ourselves, right? If we didn't learn from that, we probably couldn't work anyway. We probably still crowd on the floor, right? So to a company similarly, right, as a small new company, they are going to run into different sort of troubles, and they learn from them. Some failed, some success, right? As a big company, which obviously already went through so many cycles of this kind of a success or failures, right? The great company, almost like they have a DNA in their brand. They learn from those failures. They learn from all those success, and they apply all those lessons to face up to the future, right? So if you don't learn even from yourself, you are not going to grow, right? Just like a toddler crawling on the floor. How to start to stand up and how to walk the first step. All try and error. All kind of try and error. It's all learning, all part of learning.
So for you, I know you're an engineer by trade originally, and you're talking about something which is very much kind of an engineering approach to learning. I think is you experiment, right? Right. You do it, you try it out, you see if it works. If it doesn't work, you adjust, you readjust your hypothesis, or you readjust your parameters, or whatever it is, and you do it again, right? Can you, as a company, actually kind of pre-teach people to be successful, though? I mean, can a company bring people in and set up a program that will encourage or allow them to be more successful with less failures?
Right. I think a lot of companies already doing that, and they have many external, internal training programs to teach about all kinds of things. Even a simple project management training also, teach how to make things successful, right? As simple as that, time management. It's not just talking about how to avoid failure. It's how to make a thing great, right? So that's probably the fundamental things about the learning and the teaching in organizations. But honestly, the best learning is from the failure, especially personal failure, right? But on the other hand, how a company or a organization can allow the failure to happen. Sometimes, if we want to really, bring up our employees, give them the room to run, we need to have some stomach to to allow some of the failures, right? As long as those failures are innocent failure, not intentional, not misgiving, those kind of things, right? So and honestly, I also was kind of one of that kind of outcome.
Well, I've heard you talk, actually. I've heard you talk about failure as kind of your big teacher.
Right.
How I failed my way to the top kind of thing.
Well, for example, one of the most challenging time during my career at Ford was my time at the Nanjing. We established a new joint venture for an engine product series, and we ran into all sort of difficulty from day one. It was a three-way joint venture, an American company, a Japanese company, and a Chinese company. You can imagine how far.
Communication issues there?
All kind of issue. It's almost like a joke, but it's a reality because we fought for what kind of a toilet paper we should buy.
Something as simple as that becomes an issue.
But along the way, we found a way to stay together. And I found out every time when there was a crisis happened, actually enhance the teamwork, obviously. And also because we went through those crises together, so camaraderie feelings getting stronger and stronger, and to the point we all felt very proud of what we've accomplished as a team, even though it's a three-way joint venture. But eventually, we came out of tunnel as a team, a true team. We starting from arguing about what kind of toilet paper to a true team.
Wow.
Because we fumbled so many things, we ran into so many troubles. I just tell you two things. 1 month before our first product engines launch, you can imagine it's a casting, machining, assembly company. So casting always had some different kind of orders. So you need to have a deorderizations equipment.
Okay.
And 1
So
month
it smells.
smell bad,
Wow.
right? So you need to get rid of those chemicals, right? Either you collect that, most of the time you just burn it out, right? 1 month before the product launch, our hugely expensive deodorization tunnels just burned out.
Overworked or
Now, some interesting, smart operator doing the welding, but forgot the chemical inside the tank. So he went through the steel, and boom.
wow.
I was standing there and looking at this whole thing burned down.
You can laugh about it now, but wow, that
Yeah,
must have been
and even worse, that's right before the Chinese New Year's. And you can imagine, right? Chinese New Year in China is a big event, right? Everybody left, everybody traveling, and even the Chinese and also our Japanese friend all went back home. So just a few of us figure out how to get this thing done. So quickly order the new equipment, arrange all kinds of things, ship in during the Chinese New Year, but the custom office is not open, so you need to pick that up right after Chinese New Year. And all sort of very detailed plan, almost to the minutes. How soon we get things in, how many people need to be on site, when to start to rebuild, boom, 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 boom. And the beauty is we still launched the product on time, almost no delay.
wow.
Right, so that was wonderful because I still remember sitting at the airport of Nanjing on the Chinese New Year Eve. On my way back to Taiwan, I still making phone call to Japan, talking to my colleagues in Japan, making all kind of those kind of arrangements. It was fun, very stressful,
Sure.
but it was fun.
But you got it done. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, but then the second one is a total disaster because the second engine launch was a total failure. We because usually when we did the casting, machining, some of the defects almost like inevitable, and you try to control that one. But when we launched the second engine product, some of the issues just repeatedly recurred. So we couldn't get the right engine out of the product line, and all the engineers from Japan, from UK, from North America jump in to help. We every week we produce a prototype, retest it, failed, retest, failed, retest, failed. We delayed because that's engine because at the time China has the localization regulation. So for like a powertrain, almost like a mandatory, you must localize in order to get the vehicle sold as the local vehicles, right? So the engine was to support a whole new vehicle to be launched in China, and because of the delay, we delayed the new vehicle launch by 6 months. And you can imagine how big the loss, right? Because every vehicle is pretty good, very solid profit there. And at the time, Ford was rising, so the value forecast pretty good, pretty neat. And we just delayed the program by 6 months.
So I think this is a really interesting point to talk about because for a lot of like the younger listeners who are thinking about how do they get their career on track kind of thing. I feel like when I talk to kind of new entrants to business that a lot of them think that they've done a degree or they've done something or they've got a job in a certain company and they're on the track to being successful for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. You're clearly a successful person. I mean, you've got a fantastic job with TECO now. You've worked for Ford for 25 years. But as we've just heard, you've had some spectacular failures on the way through.
Unfortunately, Ford didn't find me.
Right. So this comes back to some of the things that we're talking about is that, great companies recognize talent. Mm-hmm. But what I'm hearing from you is that great talent is not always evident. Mm-hmm. Immediately. I'm not saying you weren't great talent, but I mean, you had some failures.
Yes.
And yet they still supported you and they still, wanted you to achieve and wanted you to kind of run their business.
Right.
So I just wonder if you
I think a couple of things happened at the time. Of course, Ford has been and is always a kind of family feeling company. even though it's a huge multinational and public listed company, but we still have that kind of family company inside, that kind of feeling. So Ford Motor Company really treat employees quite differently. Second thing is that fortunately I had a few very good bosses and also mentors, especially one person called Mr. David Shark. He was my boss several times in finance and also later part as a general manager or CEO of Taiwan and also the Johnny Motors. He taught me a lot of things. How to treat people, how to view yourself, how to run the business. We didn't talk that often, but I learned from how he behaved. Just give you one example. He's the kind of person when every time he came out to Taiwan or China to visit people, he want to memorize every person's name and write email to everyone he meet, no matter news reporters or market analyst or even the operator on the line.
Wow.
And
amazing.
He personally sent thank you mails to everyone.
Wow. That's something that I've always kind of wanted to do. I always tell myself every time I go on a business trip or I meet people at some event and I take back a stack of name cards and I go, I'm going to write to everyone here, and I do most of it.
So you can imagine how difficult it is, right?
Yeah.
But he did that every time to the point I almost like annoying me. Say what again? But. Honestly, a finance community within Ford has been a bunch of very proud professional, I would say. Since after World War II, we had this kind of blue blood in our vest. Okay, almost like we are different kind of animal. Even within a great company, we are just different kind of animal, right? We are finance. So. Most of the time, a lot of finance people are, I don't want to say mean, but tough, very, very tough, because we treat ourselves at the very high standards, and we treat our people at the very high standard.
Right.
So have a boss like Dave Sharks, he's a long-time finance person, and behave so differently, almost like like a breeze in the morning. Right? Yeah. You feel so fresh. And you feel, wow, okay, people can be success, but behave like that way.
This is also a really good lesson for people, is because a lot of people, I find, my experience, I've worked in Taiwan for 20 plus years. Most of my experience is in Taiwan. So I don't want to say it's how Taiwan works, but it's my business experience. And, I find a lot of maybe small, medium-sized companies, and we have a lot of them in Taiwan, but there is an element of kind of bosses using fear, or kind of like they walk into a room and kind of like in Chinese, the ba qi, they walk
authorities,
right? Yeah. They walk into a room, and what you're telling me is actually it's probably something completely different. Is actually much more valuable.
Yeah, and actually, I have another friends. We worked together in China for a long time. And most of the time, you can imagine the bosses in the manufacturing society must be like a very strong, very tough person. Yeah. No, he's almost like a poet, right?
Poet. Wow.
Yeah, read books, listen music, talk very softly, and if you made a mistake, oh, no problem. Let's try again. That kind of person. Yeah. And he also very, very successful. Before he retired, he was the vice president of manufacturing for China.
Wow.
Okay.
Big job.
A big job. And you imagine most of the time, those manufacturing sites, no matter in Chongqing, Nanjing, Nanchang, people are rough. right? Operators not really all the way highly educated, right? So sometimes you need to be very tough. But even when he was tough, you feel that kind of tough is not the definition of your tough, right?
You can be tough and caring at the same
Exactly,
time. Right?
but he's so effective in managing all those. You're talking about I managed a company more than thousands of people. You think about all the manufacturing plants in China under his command.
Yeah,
right.
That's a big job. That would affect. I think emotionally that could affect anybody. I mean, it's very easy to be kind of
right. But then a soft talking people can do that very effectively.
This brings me on, and I want to kind of maybe finish up with this because is there one characteristic that you feel is kind of like a key to being a great leader? It's I know it's a big question, but do you think that there's kind of one characteristic? I mean, I've listened to you, and you have obviously your engineering background has influenced you because you're clearly very clear on kind of project management and processes. But you've worked in companies over hundreds of years, for some time. Do you think that there is a key characteristic that makes a great leader?
Yes. Maybe everyone has different kind of recognition or definition. But to me, a great leader must be of high integrity. Right? The definition I made for the integrity is honesty. First, you need to be honest to yourself, honest to your work, honest to a job, honest to your society, and also very, very important, honest to your teamwork members. Right?
I think that's a really great place to finish, Thomas. Thank you so much for your time today. I really hope that I can be a leader as honest and full of integrity as you are, and hopefully not have some catastrophic...
My goal. That's my goal. I try to get there.
So I'm just hoping I don't have to go through those catastrophic failures in China before I can achieve your level of leadership. Thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
You can listen to this podcast live on the fourth Monday of every month, and after that on the ICRT website, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Leadership Matters by Stephen Parker. You can also check out my social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it, I'm on it. We'll see you next time.